Today we'll be discussing the economic boom of the 1920s. This is Unit 8, Part 2, Notes. During the 1920s, the United States entered a period of economic prosperity, or economic successes, following the recession after World War I. The economic increases were due to an excessive need for consumer goods and a drive towards a consumer-driven culture. So we'll talk about what a consumer means and why this led to this economic increase. So what is consumerism? It is economic prosperity or success that is driven by consumer needs. The consumer is the buyer of goods, so the person that makes the purchases. So if a consumer says, I need wrapping paper, then society or businesses will produce more wrapping paper. So everything's produced by that consumer's need. It stresses an importance on the purchasing of consumer goods driven by consumer interests. So everything focuses on the buyer, and it focuses on a society that needs more and more and more, and they want more things. This is very much how our society is today. You see a commercial for something that, like a video game that you really, really want, and all of a sudden it becomes a need. So then you go to the store and you buy it, and then people produce more of it. That is an example of a consumerism type of society. So what happened with consumer goods that helped the economy succeed? An increase in a need for goods, or the items that you purchase, makes prices drop. So why does this make prices drop? Well, businesses that are making more products are able to purchase goods that, or the materials needed to produce those goods at a bulk price. So if you think of Sam's Club, where you buy a lot of stuff and everything's cheaper per item, that's kind of what businesses are facing when they're looking for the products and resources that they need. So they're able to buy more, so they're able to lower the price. Also, when they're making more money, they don't need to bring back as much of a profit per item because they get so much added up with all of the items that are being purchased. The government also supported the economy by placing a high tariff tax on imports from outside the United States. So people saw goods that were purchased from outside the United States as not as desirable because they could get something very similar produced in the United States and was cheaper. Also, the demand for goods were on products that made life easier for the middle class. So now we have appliances like washing machines, refrigerators, and other household items, and that really drove a lot of the economy at this time. In addition to this drive for consumer goods, there's also an increase in interest in the stock market, and stock prices started to rise rapidly. People were allowed to buy on margin. So basically they borrowed money to buy stocks. So let's say stock was $2. They would pay $1 for that stock and eventually owe that money. So then if they were able to make money in the stock market, so if stock prices rose, then they would take whatever money that they made. So let's say now that stock's worth $5. They would pay off the $1 that they owe, and then they'd keep the extra $4. So that was really good. But what would happen if the stock price falls? Then, let's say you buy the stock for $2. You only pay $1 of it because you buy on margin, and then the price drops to $1. So now you owe $1 on that stock, and then you already owed $1 on it. So you're losing $2 that you don't have. This is kind of confusing, and we'll go over it more in class, but this gives you an idea of the dangers of buying on margin, but also why it seems so desirable, because people could purchase things without having that amount of money, but still make money on it. So this started to make people very wealthy. But in 1928, where you see this huge spike that's right here, economists begin to worry that the high prices of stocks did not equal a high value. They thought it was maybe overvalued. So what that means is that the predictions were off, and eventually all this money that was going into the stock market would eventually crash. So this was very risky, and a lot of economists thought maybe we should start urging people to not buy on margin so that they didn't end up owing all this money that they didn't have. There are some signs of trouble, especially amongst the farming communities. They suffered after World War I and continue to suffer through the economic boom. About a fifth of all farmers were facing poverty, so they couldn't make enough money to live in a way that was healthy. The reason that this happened is because they ended up producing more crops than could be consumed, so a lot of it went to waste, and they didn't make a lot of money on their product. They also faced high debt for the amount of cost that it took to farm. So that triggered this impoverished state for many farmers. Also, although workers earned higher wages at this time due to the influx of labor unions, they also faced unemployment because certain jobs are starting to be taken over by types of technology. And that's something that we fear even now. But there's such a drastic increase in technology at that time that it really took a toll. So a lot of people could not find a job, which then eventually led to poverty. In the election of 1928, everybody's feeling really good about the stock market booming. Everyone has new stuff to buy, new technology to use, new music to listen to, new types of dances, and they're really hoping that they have a president that will carry them on with this prosperity and that they wouldn't have any glimmer of something bad. So Hoover, who was a Republican, Herbert Hoover, and we've heard of him before, he helped out Woodrow Wilson during World War I. He won on a pledge for prosperity, which is like success in society, and he also won on hope. So he's famous for the saying, a chicken in every pot and a car in every garage, saying that everybody would be successful, that we'd get the poverty problem figured out, and we'd continue on this great way that society was moving during the 1920s. However, what we now know is that Herbert Hoover, during his presidency, he'd also faced the greatest economic depression of our country's history. So kind of interesting that he ran on this election for prosperity, but during his time, the market's going to crash. And that's all for today. Please come to class with questions and willing to understand the economic boom and why it occurred.